this election, I think for a lot of people, was a surprise that shouldn't have been a surprise. I know it was for me. I think I had allowed myself the 107-day delusion that it was possible for this incredible, Black and Asian woman to win. And then you were sort of snapped into reality on November 5th. Were you as deluded as I was going in, and what is your reaction to the result?
I mean, I don't know if I was deluded. I thought she was going to win. I did think she was going to win. I don't know. I think I'm probably not the best person to ask. And I'll just talk about my perspective on this. And it comes from a couple places. Joy, we saw each other out at the DNC. So I personally, and I'm sorry, guys, this is going to probably upset a few of you. And I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings here. I'm really not. But look, I personally watched them march out and run on the legacy of Jesse Jackson's 2 presidential runs. Jesse Jackson in '88 was the last person that allowed an Arab American to address the DNC. There hasn't been one since then. It was the last time Palestinian rights were addressed. I watched them run on the legacy of Shirley Chisholm. It had been, 60 years since Fannie Lou Hamer had been excluded?
Yeah. I
watched them run on that. And then I stood outside and watched them exclude a group of people. And look, the numbers probably do not add up to, the notion that this is what cost her the vote. But I do think, you have to think about the soul of the party. And I think you have to think about, forget the party, I think you have to think about the soul of your movement. And I just wonder what it means when you are so afraid or indifferent, or I don't know what it is, I don't want to attribute motives, but whatever it is, that you, who could not have been this party's nominee in 1964, right, cannot bring yourself to oppose dropping bombs on children in defense of apartheid. Maybe I would have swung the election, maybe it wouldn't. I'm not saying it wouldn't. I'm not, you lost because of Gaza. I'm not saying that. But I don't think all manners of loss are the same. We can't control how, what happens. To some extent, this is not up to us. I think about my life like this, right? I think about, okay, how do I want to lose? Don't let me lose defending genocide. I just don't want to lose that way. You know what I mean? If the American people reject me because I said, I can't get behind this dude who is an enemy of democracy, an enemy of human rights, is taking American bombs and with American fighter jets and dropping them on hospitals and schools. I can't get behind it, and I lose on that. I mean, I can sleep at night. I wish I had won, but I can sleep at night. I'm also not in politics. So, I mean, maybe people's moral calculus is different, but there is a part of me, man, that obviously, I wish she won. I think a lot of people are going to get hurt because of the fact, I just want to be clear about that. I don't think it's better that she lost. I think a lot of vulnerable people are going to be really, really hurt. I wish the class of people who are the leaders of this party had more courage. And I think, and forgive me, I don't mean to extend this, but I think about 2 things, okay? I think about the fact that it was 20 years ago that Barack Obama really began his ascent, right? It's our first Black president. And people forget this. But a Barack Obama who supported the Iraq war would never have been president. Sure. This movement started there. It actually started, you got a lot of people who, will run the numbers, this and that, try to predict things. But there was a moral core to what he was doing that got people excited. And how we ended up here, where we are effectively supporting the destruction of Gaza under the Orwellian language of self-defense. I don't know. And so, you say, well, Ta-Nehisi, you're not really accounting for the very real, and hard work of politics. And I say, okay, but let's take a second. And let's think about this party since 1992. You lost affirmative action. You lost a woman's right to choose. Labor is under siege. You have lost the environment. Public schools are, effectively taken as, playgrounds for the private. You lost campaign finance reform. You lost the Supreme Court. You may lose Obamacare, which itself was a conservative compromise. What did this get? What did you win? Like, what did all of this strategizing and all of this, deep knowledge about, what did you ultimately win? And so when you start looking at it like that, and then you see the same people who have led you to this loss, Bill Clinton being deployed to Michigan, to do what? Liz Cheney, who has, she showed great courage, but has a constituency of 0, apparently. What are we doing here? So you don't have the tactics, you don't have the strategy, you don't have the morals. So what do we have then? It's dark. It's not like these people take immoral positions and then win. They don't. They don't. And so, when you look at the long stretch of this, Kamala losing almost underestimates the disaster. And it is a disaster, and I just think what I would hate is for this party to not do any sort of internal reckoning and just put out the next version of this. I can't hear in 2028, this is the most important election of our lifetime. Please don't tell me that again.
Yeah.
Please don't tell me that again.
The sad thing is this one probably was.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. But how many of these can we take?
I know.
Apparently, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Last minute, you say. But
yeah.
I just think there really needs to be some deep-seated analysis about what this is about. Because they know what they're about. They're about hierarchy. And they're clear on it. They're very clear they're about hierarchy. They publicly say it. Puerto Rico is an island of trash. They tell you straight up and down. They tell you, I'm going to deport all of y'all. And apparently some people like it, but some people who will be deported like it apparently. But you know what I mean? It's I don't think we have that kind of clarity.
Yeah, and this does really bring me to the book because I feel like one of the challenges that we've always had in this country is that we're fighting against the stories we've been told and that we tell about the people in this country. So if you believe the stories that have been told about Black people, right, pre the 1619 Project, and you just believe that slavery somehow benefited Black people, that Black people should be grateful to be in America, which I've heard a lot from the right, then you can't abide Black Lives Matter. You can't abide Black liberation because you're saying, but I believe the story as I was told it. And you in this book challenge the story and ask people to step back and actually reimagine it. I think as did Nicole Hannah-Jones, honestly, a lot of this backlash, let's just be clear, is about her. Yeah. It's about her forcing us to retell the story of our relationship as Black people to America. Yeah. And you talk, and there's 2 places in this book where you talked about a notorious storyteller named D.W. Griffith. And I think it's really related to the election, honestly. When I found these 2 passages, I said, okay, I need to dog ear these. By the way, don't ever borrow a book from me. I destroy books. They are marked up. This isn't even my original book. I forgot my other book. My book is destroyed. I have it dog-eared. I have pages. I have notes in it. You can't even borrow a book from me. But I found these 2 passages that I thought were really important. So here's the first passage. This is on page 108 when you guys go back and read the book. When D.W. Griffith wanted to shoot a large arrow right into the heart of American cinema, he knew exactly what story to tell, and he knew exactly how to do it. And it would not be art for art's sake. The Civil War hasn't been told accurately in history books, Griffith asserted. Only the winning side in the war ever gets to tell the story. This was an exaggeration, the kind of inversion that power uses to justify itself. The way the bully pretends to be the victim to add virtue to his violence. Ooh, that's so strong. But the losers of the Civil War were not victims. In fact, Birth of a Nation shared its worldview with the President of the United States, Woodrow Wilson. Griffith used texts from Woodrow Wilson's 10-volume History of the American People throughout the film. In turn, Wilson screened the film at the White House. This was art as politics, and it was monstrously successful. It remade the business of cinema, the art of film in American history. Inspired by Birth of a Nation, the second Ku Klux Klan was born, taking their rituals, which haunt us to this day, directly from the film. And then in 1919, 4 years after the film's premiere, the Red Summer and the scourge of lynching swept the country. Life imitated art, and Black people were left fleeing and fighting for their lives. So
that's where they, that's where they got the burning cross from. The burning cross comes from the film.
From the book, from the film.
From the book, and then you're exactly right. It was in the book first, and then in the film. It's not like he got that from the Klan. It's the other way around.
That's right.
He gave the Klan that.
Yeah.
Which people forget.
And so let me pause on that for a moment. I have a second passage I'm going to read that's also about D.W. Griffith, okay? But I want to stay on this for a moment because part of the war on the right is against removing that story about Black people, right? It is about their anger over the removal of that story and the replacement of that story with a Black liberation narrative, a narrative that we read in the 1619 Project, the sort of, pride in knowing that our history was more complex. They don't like it. No. And Trump is already promising he's going to banish that history again and put us back to where we were then. Talk about why that war seems to be so successful and why so many people of color, including some Black people, are willing to vote for it.
Yeah, I don't completely understand.
And not that many, but just some.
Yeah, some. I don't completely understand that part. I'll be honest with you. I do think this, and this is like like some tough conversations we have to have, and I want to be very clear about this because I'm not insulting anybody. And honestly, Joy, before I even get to that, I have to say, whenever we're talking about people of color or even white people voting for Trump and bringing us to this present catastrophe, I just got to remind folks that there were some very powerful people that could have stopped this and decided not to.
Yeah.
It didn't have to come to this.
Stairs and Merrick Garland.
And why Biden appointed Merrick Garland, and there were people who they just didn't want to fight. They didn't want to fight. They were scared, they got punked, and here we are. Yeah. And so I know, on some level it is important to look at the demographics who voted for this. It never, listen, these people have bills to pay, they got jobs to work, they do not have the luxury, people like us of studying every little thing that somebody says and figuring out what is what. But there are people in Washington who are appointed who could have stopped this and just didn't want the smoke. And more than anything, I hold them responsible. More than any individual voter. People who just run around and talk about the glory of America and this and that, but will not, I'm trying not to curse, will not fight. They will not fight. They're cowards. They're cowards. And so, when you start looking at who's responsible, I don't ever want us to forget that. There are individual people who could have and should have stopped this and wanted no part.
Yeah.
In terms of why, certain groups went a certain way, I don't know. I don't particularly understand it. I do think this. I think Black people are different. And I think we have to understand that we are different. And I don't mean that in there's something in our bones is different, but we have been involved in politics in this country since 1619. We have been negotiating on slave plantations, negotiating under Jim Crow, negotiating under segregation, trying to figure out the best way to save our lives. We are used to negotiating between lesser evils. We are very, very accustomed to say my master just did something that pissed me off and I want to run, but if I run, this will happen to my wife, so I cannot. We're accustomed to that. We're accustomed to having Abraham Lincoln in 1864 bring a group of Black folks to the White House and say, all of y'all should leave, and having to actually say the choice is either him or this guy, McClellan, who will enslave all of us again. And those are our choices. They're not great. They're not great. We're used to this. We're used to, the New Deal, and this guy, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, oh, I'm gonna build this, middle class, and you know what I mean, but I'm gonna keep you out of it, and having to support him because the other option is worse. So we have a politics that is not a politics of the American dream. We've never had a politics. We have captive voter politics. That's what we have. We have slave politics. I don't mean that in a demeaning way. I actually mean it in a wise way, in a pragmatic way. You know what I mean? Most people who come here don't have those politics. Why would you come here if you knew what America was? You wouldn't. You wouldn't. That's not your fault either. I'm not like saying, oh, you should know. Right. Most of us don't know about Israel. You understand what I'm saying? So it's not like, you know what I mean, we are somehow better than. It's just a matter of collective experience and collective wisdom. You don't have that. And so you come here and you think like an election is about the person that best represents my hopes and dreams. It'd be nice if it was. Yeah. Theoretically, it should be. But for the most part, that has not been true for Black folks. And so I think, regrettably, there were, portions of this country that maybe for the first time, I don't know, but we're faced with, folks who would not acknowledge their very existence.